It takes one little mistake to send the world into chaos. One drop on the wrong side of the scales, and it tips irreparably. Green, one color that truly makes me sick. Green is the color of rot and ruin, mold and mildew. It's the color of plants. What I'm about to tell you, I want you to remember, it wasn't my fault. At least not entirely. I was the catalyst, the action that tipped the scales, but it wasn't my doing. Yes, signing up for an experimental trial for anti-anxiety medicine that came in the form of eye drops was. I just wanted to get better. But now anxiety is at an all-time high. The bottle had no warnings yet, as I was testing for said warnings. What I didn't know was that they burned. So as I'm putting them in, I yelp and reel around like a dying fish. My flailing hands dropped the bottle, and I heard it thump down without breaking. In the back of my mind, I'd been relieved, but I shouldn't have been. The outcome was far worse than if it had smashed harmlessly on the floor. When I could finally see again, I looked for the bottle of eye drops, only to find it upended in the fly trap planter on my nightstand. I quickly snatched up the bottle, glad to find I'd only lost a third of the medication into the soil. I sighed as I figured it would kill the poor plant. Capping the bottle, I just shrugged and crawled into bed, turning the light off. Sure enough, the next morning, the plant was drooping and looking sickly. With another shrug, I got up and started to get ready for work. Over the course of a week, the plant seemed to worsen, almost as if the more the medication worked on me, the more of a toll it took on the plant. Why I didn't just throw the plant away is beyond me, but I should have. Things just weren't as they seemed, as it usually was in these situations. It wasn't until I was hit with a cold. That's what I thought it was, anyways. Almost exactly a month after I'd begun the 3-month trial, I suddenly became groggy and feverish. I got to the point I couldn't even get out of bed, and that's when I noticed it. The plant was flourishing again. It was even bigger than before it had come in contact with the medicine. The strange thing was, its leaves had developed these sticky red bumps that seemed to catch flies as much as the main part of it did. While stuck in bed with this cold, I watched the plant's progression with an almost obsessive interest. Just as soon as the cold had come, it was gone, and I was back to myself. But the plant itself didn't wilt again. The joy I felt at this was unnatural. I should have noticed this, but I didn't. I just began to take care of it, neglecting everything else. The other plants in my home died. My boss fired me for not showing up to work. I was consumed with responsibility for a plant that shouldn't have needed any attention at all. Things had only just begun to spiral out of control, though. Unlocking my front door after the last grocery run I could afford, I found my cat sitting and waiting for me as usual. But she was sitting in a puddle of greenish fluid. "Madsy, what's wrong?" I asked, setting the groceries on the counter and turning to check on her. But she was no longer sitting in the puddle. Paw prints led back toward the bedroom. I swallowed as a sudden sense of dread filled me. My footsteps were muted by the carpet as I made my way after the paw prints. The bedroom door was cracked open, just enough for Madsy to slip through. My heartbeat was loud in my ears as I approached the door and pushed it open. The paw prints ended just outside. She could be anywhere in the room. I stepped inside and pushed the door shut behind me. "Madsy, sweetie, it's all right. Mommy just wants to make sure you're okay," I said, hearing the shake in my own voice. I slowly crouched down and lifted the blanket to look under the bed. Madsy sat curled up, looking at me with blank eyes. "Come here, honey," I called, reaching for her. She meowed, and suddenly there came a nasty, squelching sound. Green fluid spilled down her fur, and her head fell to the side. Vines shot out from her body like plant vines, complete with leaves and thorns and everything. I cried out in shock and terror, skittering back from the bed. The blanket fell down again, concealing the sight. But it didn't block out the sounds. The sound of cracking and wet squelching. I scrambled to my feet, taking off toward the door. I slammed the door shut behind me and ran for the house phone, dialing 911. 911, what's your emergency? Came the voice on the other end of the line. There's something wrong with my cat. I'm afraid she's going to attack me, I cried, knowing explaining the truth would make me sound crazy, but something was really wrong. All right, ma'am, calm down. Are you in a secure location away from the animal? Yes, I closed her in the bedroom. That's good, ma'am. What's your address so I can call animal control? I swallowed as I hesitantly gave her my address. I could only hope animal control had what it took to handle whatever the hell was happening in that room. Ma'am, please stay on the line until help arrives, came the operator's voice, moments before a heavy thud hit the door. I screamed, launching for the knife stand on the kitchen island. Hurry! I think she's trying to get out! Tell them to hurry! I cried, dropping the phone as another heavy thump smacked the door so hard it shook the frame. Whatever was in there, whatever had become of Madsy, it was no longer small and dainty. It sounded huge, like a monster. Another thud shook the door, followed by the sickening, groaning crack of wood giving away under immense pressure. Hello, ma'am. Are you still there? Are you all right? I distantly heard from the phone on the floor at my feet. I was frozen, staring at the breaking bedroom door with what I can only assume was great terror as a thorn vine forced itself through the crack and began to pry the splintering wood apart. I was startled from my shocked and terrified staring by loud pounding on the house door. Animal control! Open up! Came a stern, authoritative voice. But I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, unable to budge an inch. Come in quickly! I screamed as the door finally gave up the fight, torn to pieces by the powerful vines that snaked and writhed as they slid out the hole it had made. The house door slammed open and the sound of heavy boots filled the house as a group of men armed with tasers and a wire loop on a pole came marching in. For a moment, it was as if time stood still. The monstrous mass of vines froze as the man stopped, standing between me and it. I still couldn't move, forced to watch the look of horror cross each man's face before time suddenly exploded forward again. The monstrous thing let out a shrill clicking sound before its vines launched out and encircled one of the men's legs, sinking its thorns, now dripping with that greenish fluid through his pant legs, into his flesh. The man let out a shout and was ripped forward by the now bleeding appendage. Another man tried to beat the vines away with the pole with the wire loop, as the vines further twined up the man's leg, pulling at him as blood and green goop spilled across the floor, spreading fast. I was still frozen in place. No matter how hard I tried to budge my muscles, I was stuck in place like a statue of shock and horror. The screams suddenly stopped as the man wrapped in vines fell still. The man with the pole was the only thing still in motion as he continued to beat at the vines. They had strangely stopped their entwining. I knew something had to be very wrong then. My fears only grew as the vines withdrew from the man. I tensed, waiting for them to attack the other man with the pole, only for the body of the first man to jerk with that all too familiar squelching sound. Then, vines ripped free from his stomach, sending green goo everywhere. It splattered the walls and coated the already saturated carpet. I was only able to watch it attack the man with the pole before my eyes caught movement in my direction. I screamed at my body to move as the first monster, the one that had once been Madsy, came toward me. But it didn't move hostilely. Vines encircled my body, making me tense in expectation of the thorns. But they never came. Hello, Mommy. You are safe now. It hissed at me, and my heart stopped. The end.